Mark Minervini won the prestigious U.S. Investing Championship. He started out as an 8th-grade dropout living in deep poverty, but he completely refused to let his difficult past dictate his future. By fundamentally changing his mindset, he turned a few $1,000s into a massive personal fortune by age 31 and won the prestigious U.S. Investing Championship. His true strategy for investment success isn't based on blind luck, but rather on fiercely protecting your capital, mastering a consistent daily process, and believing unconditionally that winning is a conscious choice. You already possess the same incredible potential to break through your own limitations and build the wealth and lifestyle you desire. Listen now to discover the powerful mental secrets that will inspire you to turn your setbacks into stepping stones and become a true champion in your own life. Here are 15 top strategies and techniques from Mark Minervini that you need to know. Let's talk in 7 lessons first. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next video.
You know, it's really fascinating hearing you read that verbatim. Yeah, because, well, on the surface, it sounds like standard motivational marketing, right? Like, we've all heard those pitches.
Oh, absolutely. The classic elevator pitch.
Exactly. But the whole reason we are doing a deep dive into Mark Minervini's work today, his book, Mindset Secrets for Winning, is because underneath all that flash is a profoundly rigorous, almost clinical deconstruction of human psychology.
Right, because we are so used to seeing just the outcome, you know, the millions of dollars, the gold medals.
The massive championships, yeah. And we completely ignore the invisible, frankly, grueling psychological rewiring it actually took to get there.
Which is exactly why I wanted to read that exact excerpt to you listening today. It perfectly frames the friction we are going to explore.
It really does.
Because it's so easy to look at elite performers, to look at their bank accounts or their sheer talent, and just assume they were born with a different operating system than the rest of us.
Oh, people do that all the time.
Right. We look at the finish line and we are totally blind to the marathon. But the fundamental premise of Minervini's work is that the gap between winning and losing isn't physical.
No, not at all.
It isn't financial either. It is overwhelmingly psychological.
It really is the ultimate differentiator. I mean, think about it. The human body or a specific financial market, they all have natural, hard mathematical limits.
Sure, there's a ceiling.
Exactly. But the potential of the human mind to adapt, to strategize, is virtually unlimited. If your intellectual ability and your mental strategy are not as robust as your physical ability, you will inevitably hit a wall.
So your mindset is basically the engine block.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. You can have the most beautifully designed aerodynamic car in the world with the best tires, but if the engine is cracked, you aren't going anywhere.
And the text really backs this up by quoting some of the greatest athletes in history, like Mark Spitz.
Oh, right, the swimmer.
Yeah, the guy who won 7 Olympic gold medals in a single games. He explicitly stated that the difference between winning and losing is 99% psychological.
Which is a staggering percentage coming from a physical athlete.
Seriously. And Jack Nicklaus, arguably the greatest golfer ever, said essentially the exact same thing. But what makes Minervini's perspective so compelling is that his journey didn't start in a country club.
Or some Olympic training facility, right?
Exactly. It started in deep, gritty poverty.
Which is vital context for anyone listening, because before he was a Wall Street wizard, he was an 8th-grade dropout.
Right. And there is a story he shares from his childhood that I think perfectly grounds this entire conversation about self-image. It's a story about a chair.
A chair. Yeah, the green chair.
Right. So he talks about going over to a friend's house for the first time. And to a kid who grew up in real poverty, walking into this middle-class house was just a total revelation.
Like a different planet.
Exactly. He describes a finished basement, a big color TV, a pool in the backyard. But the thing that completely captivated him wasn't the pool.
Right. It was in the dad's office, wasn't it?
Yes. It was a big green leather chair sitting behind a glossy cherry wood desk.
It's such a specific detail to stick in a kid's mind.
It really is.
Yeah.
And for a child in his position, that chair wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was, it functioned as an anchor point for a completely different reality.
Yeah, a little while later, he actually goes to a meeting with his dad's lawyer, and he notices the lawyer is sitting in the exact same kind of green leather chair.
With the tufted brass rivets and everything.
Exactly. And to young Minervini, that chair became the physical embodiment of success. I think he literally called it a throne of dignity.
A throne of dignity. Okay, let's unpack this. Because what's crucial to analyze here is how that symbol permanently impacted his developing self-image, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because If you fast forward decades later, Minervini is finally starting to make real money of his own on Wall Street.
And what does he do?
The very first thing he does before buying a fancy car or a house is march into a high-end furniture store and drop $4,200 on that exact style of green leather chair.
$4,000 for a single chair. And I love that he admits that it was vastly overpriced, but he just did not care in the slightest.
Because he wasn't engaging in a financial transaction for wood and leather, He was purchasing a feeling.
The feeling of being a winner.
Yes, he was buying the physical, tangible manifestation of his new identity. Sitting in that chair bridged the gap between the impoverished kid he was and the champion he was becoming.
Wow, yeah.
And it illustrates a vital point from the source material that we need to establish right up front. Success is not just about beating an opponent or making money.
It's an internal state.
Precisely. It is personal fulfillment and the deliberate reshaping of your own self-image. If you can't leverage your external accomplishments to change how you fundamentally view yourself, the trophies are just metal. The money is just paper.
Lesson 1. Choose to win today. And Minervini frames this as the no-luck strategy.
The no-luck strategy, right?
Yeah, he leans heavily on a quote from Lyndon B. Johnson here. Yesterday is not ours to recover, but tomorrow is ours to win or lose. The core idea here is that winning and losing are conscious, deliberate choices. Hope is not a strategy.
It absolutely is not. I mean, if you walk through life attributing your successes and failures to luck or fate or the economy, you are doing catastrophic psychological damage to yourself.
How so?
Well, you are actively developing what psychologists call learned helplessness.
Oh, learned helplessness. That's from Martin Seligman's research, right?
Exactly, Seligman. He discovered that if animals, and humans, by the way, are subjected to negative conditions that they believe they have absolutely no control over, they will eventually just stop trying to escape.
Even when an easy opportunity is right there.
Yes. They learn to be helpless. So if you truly believe that you have no ultimate control over your outcomes, then on a deep subconscious level, you accept that effort is pointless.
Because why would you give 100% of your energy, wake up early, study your craft, if you believe the outcome is just a roll of the cosmic dice?
You wouldn't. You just sit back and wait to see if you get lucky.
What's fascinating here is the metaphor Minervini uses to explain how to break out of this. He compares life to a radio station.
I love this metaphor.
It's so good. Think about a radio. Right now, in the room you are sitting in, listening to this, there are hundreds of frequencies broadcasting simultaneously, right?
Okay, classical music, talk radio, static.
It's all in the air right now.
Yeah.
And Minervini argues that there's always a way to win and a way to lose broadcasting at the exact same time in your life.
Yeah.
The circumstances you are experiencing right now are simply a reflection of which station you have chosen to tune your dial to.
It's powerful because it brings in the concept of the reticular activating system in our brains.
The RAS, right?
Yeah. Our brains are bombarded with billions of bits of information every second. We physically cannot process it all. So our brain filters it based on what we tell it is important.
So if you tune your internal radio to, like, the market is rigged, I can't win,
your brain will actually filter out opportunities and only show you evidence that confirms you are a victim. You literally won't see the winning path because you aren't tuned to that frequency.
Okay, I hear that, but I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who is dealing with real-world chaos.
Sure, let's hear it.
It's very easy to say, just tune your radio to winning. But what about random, uncontrollable events?
The things outside our control.
Right. I can't control the global economy. I can't control if my industry gets disrupted by AI tomorrow. I can't control the weather. So how can anyone sit there and say winning is entirely a conscious choice?
That is the most common and, frankly, the most valid pushback to this philosophy. But the text anticipates this and addresses it directly through a concept called controlling the controllable.
Controlling the controllable.
Yeah, imagine a diagram with two concentric circles. The massive outer circle contains all the things you just mentioned.
The economy, the weather, disease.
Exactly what other people think of you. If you spend your mental bandwidth stressing about that outer circle, you'll feel completely hopeless.
Because you're trying to steer a ship by yelling at the ocean? It just doesn't work.
Precisely. But the inner circle, the small, dense circle in the center, that is where your true power lies.
The things you actually have agency over.
Right. You cannot control the world, but you absolutely control what you choose to learn today. You control who you allow into your inner circle.
You control what you believe about your own potential.
Yes. You control how you respond to criticism and how you respond to failure. By actively choosing to focus 100% of your energy on that inner circle, you are making the conscious choice to win.
You are building a robust internal system.
Exactly, so that when the uncontrollable outer circle throws a hurricane at you, you have the skills to navigate it. You are preparing yourself so that when luck does happen, you are actually equipped to capitalize on it.
Which flows perfectly into the next major psychological shift.
Yeah.
Lesson 2. Take 100% ownership of your reality.
This is a tough one for a lot of people.
It is. This is what the book calls the zero excuses rule. There's a fantastic Abraham Lincoln quote here. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today.
Minervini is incredibly blunt in this section.
He really is. He basically says, you are the creator of everything you experience. No one has a say over your life without your permission.
And, this is often the most painful lesson for people to internalize because it requires dropping what the author calls the psychological hot potato of blame.
The hot potato. Yes. Let's dig into that visual because it perfectly captures human nature.
Well, when something goes wrong in our lives, our immediate primal instinct is to toss the blame away from ourselves as quickly as possible.
Because holding on to failure hurts.
Exactly. It is physically and psychologically painful to hold on to failure. So, like a burning hot potato, we toss it. We toss it to our environment, our parents, our boss, the political climate.
It's not my fault we lost the account. The client was unreasonable.
Or, it's not my fault I didn't get the promotion. The manager plays favorites.
Right. And tossing that hot potato feels deeply satisfying in the short term. It relieves the internal pressure.
But in the long term, it is absolutely devastating to your growth. The moment you blame someone or something else for your situation, you have surrendered your agency.
You've given away your power.
You have. If you convince yourself that an external villain is responsible for your failure, you are simultaneously conditioning yourself to wait for an external hero to save you. And the harsh reality is, no one is coming to save you.
So what does this all mean? Because I have a major philosophical issue with how this gets weaponized in self-help circles.
The toxic positivity angle.
Yeah, exactly. If we take zero excuses to its extreme, it sounds a lot like toxic victim blaming.
I see where you're going with this.
Let's look at this practically. If a startup founder's business gets completely wiped out because a global pandemic shuts down supply chains, telling them you are the creator of your reality, this is 100% your fault, feels incredibly tone deaf.
Or downright cruel.
Right.
Yeah.
So where is the line between taking ownership and just engaging in this pendulum swing of toxic self-blame?
That is a phenomenal distinction to make, and it's where many people misunderstand the concept of ownership entirely.
How so?
Taking 100% ownership does not mean saying, I caused the global pandemic, or I caused the other driver to run the red light and total my car. That is fault.
Okay, fault versus ownership.
Yes. Fault is backward-looking. Ownership is about cultivating the ability to respond. In fact, the word responsibility literally breaks down to responsibility.
The ability to respond.
Right. It means accepting the harsh reality of the situation without judgment and saying, okay, this terrible thing happened. It may not be my fault, but it is now my reality. How am I going to respond to it?
So it's not about being the architect of the hurricane. It's about being the architect of the rebuild.
Beautifully said. You replace the paralyzing, backward-looking feeling of blame with the empowering, forward-looking feeling of acceptance. You take ownership of the next step.
There's an incredible story in the book that illustrates this perfectly, involving a man named W. Mitchell.
Oh, his story is unbelievable.
For you listening, if you don't know W. Mitchell's story, it is jaw-dropping. He was in a horrific motorcycle accident where he suffered third-degree burns over 65% of his body.
He lost his fingers. His face was unrecognizable.
Right. He survives that, rehabs, starts a successful business, and then years later, he is in a plane crash that leaves him paralyzed from the waist down.
If anyone had the right to hold the hot potato of blame and say life is unfair, it was him.
100%. But instead, he became a millionaire, a mayor, and an internationally renowned speaker. And he has this profound metaphor about a car's windshield.
It is brilliant in its simplicity.
He says there's a reason the car manufacturers make the windshields so much bigger than the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Because if you were driving a car at 60 miles an hour and you spend 80% of your time staring into the tiny rearview mirror, you are going to crash into a tree.
You have to look out the massive windshield in front of you.
Spending too much time looking back, analyzing whose fault the past was, or agonizing over what you lost, drains all your cognitive energy from the present moment. And the present moment is the only place you have any power to actually construct your future.
That shifts us beautifully into the mechanics of exactly how we construct that future without burning out. Which brings us to the next phase of Minervini's framework.
Lesson 3. Fall in love with the process.
Build, don't wreck.
Exactly. The mandate here is to build, don't wreck. We live in a society that is totally addicted to instant gratification. We want the life hack, the shortcut.
The overnight success.
Right. But elite achievement always, without exception, happens in stages. You have to trust the process and not demand too much of yourself too fast.
There is a Helen Keller quote in the text that anchors this perfectly.
Oh, yes. I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but it is my chief duty to accomplish small tasks as if they were great and noble.
That quote is so grounding. Because when you set a massive goal like winning a national championship or building a huge portfolio, the day-to-day work can feel incredibly mundane.
It's a grind.
It is. And that friction is what separates the elites from the amateurs. Minervini breaks this down by explaining that inside every single one of us, there are two opposing psychological forces constantly at war.
Okay, the builder and the wrecking ball.
Exactly. On one side, you have the builder. The builder is disciplined, the builder is process-driven, but most importantly, the builder views mistakes not as indictments of their character, but as necessary clinical data points for improvement.
And on the other side,
you have the wrecking ball. The wrecking ball is completely fixated on fast results. The wrecking ball gets discouraged the second things get hard, loses confidence, and immediately starts looking for someone to hand that hot potato of blame to.
The wrecking ball is the part of us that wants the Olympic gold medal, but throws a tantrum when the alarm goes off at 4 a.m. for practice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reminds me of that famous Native American story referenced in the text.
Oh, the one with the two wolves?
Yes. The one where a grandfather is talking to his grandson about the battle going on inside his own mind. He tells the boy that there are two wolves fighting inside his heart. One wolf is vengeful, angry, destructive, and impatient.
So that is our wrecking ball.
Exactly. And the other wolf is understanding, kind, patient, and focused. That is our builder. The grandson thinks about it and asks which wolf will win. And the grandfather replies, the one that wins will be the one I choose to feed.
That is a timeless parable.
Yeah.
And it maps so well to our actual neurobiology.
It really does. Because when we obsess over fast results and get angry when we don't get them, we are feeding the amygdala, the emotional reactive center of our brain.
And when we focus on the process,
when we take satisfaction in small daily improvements, we are engaging the prefrontal cortex and building long-term sustainable dopamine pathways. We have to consciously, daily, choose to feed the builder and starve the wrecking ball.
I love how Minervini relates this to his own process of writing this very book. He admits that writing was a massive challenge for him. It's a daily grind of taking notes, refining ideas, reworking paragraphs over and over.
He didn't just sit down at his keyboard and demand a bestseller spontaneously flow from his fingertips.
No. He viewed the process like climbing a very tall, challenging staircase. You have to take each step enthusiastically. If you stand at the bottom of the staircase, stare at the top, and just get irritated that you aren't up there yet, you are acting like a wrecking ball.
You aren't going to climb, you are just going to smash the stairs in frustration.
Right. And climbing those stairs requires a fundamental shift in how you view yourself while you are on them. You cannot climb high if, deep down, you secretly believe you belong at the bottom.
Which perfectly sets up what I think is the most transformative insight in the entire deep dive today.
Lesson 4. Upgrade your mental software. This is all about rewriting your self-image. The premise here is absolute. You cannot outperform your self-image.
It is a biological and psychological impossibility.
Right. No matter how much natural talent you have, if your internal self-image is a 4 out of 10, your performance under high pressure will inevitably revert back to a 4. The author quotes Deepak Chopra here, who said, "To change the printout of the body, you must learn to rewrite the software of the mind."
This concept is profound because it explains a phenomenon we see all the time, Highly talented people who consistently self-sabotage right when they are on the verge of a breakthrough.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To explain this, the book uses the classic iceberg theory. We all know the visual. Only about 10% of an iceberg is visible above the surface of the water.
And the remaining 90% is a massive hidden structure submerged below.
Exactly. And in this psychological model, that visible 10% is your conscious mind. That is your logic, your willpower, your immediate focus.
It's the part of you that sets New Year's resolution.
Right, the part that says, I am going to double my sales this quarter. or I am going to stick to this diet.
But the 90% below the surface,
Yeah.
that is your subconscious.
Yes, and your subconscious is the repository for your deepest instincts, your long-term memories, your self-worth, and your protective fight-or-flight reactions.
Minervini uses a ship metaphor in the text. The conscious mind is the captain, and the subconscious is the crew. But to really bring this into a modern context for you listening, think of your conscious mind as the visionary CEO of a company.
Okay, the CEO and the subconscious.
Your subconscious is the legacy IT infrastructure running in the basement.
Oh, I like that. The CEO versus the servers.
Exactly. The CEO can stand on stage at a company all-hands meeting and declare, "We are an agile, AI-first, cutting-edge company now, full speed ahead." That's your willpower talking.
Oh, but the servers are running Windows 95.
Exactly. If the legacy code in the basement is built on 30-year-old software that fundamentally rejects new inputs, the system is going to crash.
Wow.
If the IT infrastructure, your subconscious, holds a deeply ingrained self-image of unworthiness or a fear of success, it doesn't matter what the CEO says. The system secretly believes, we don't belong at this level. We are imposters.
And what happens then?
The subconscious will intentionally or unintentionally sabotage the CEO's plan to protect the system from the unknown. Your external performance will always shrink or expand to match the internal self-image held in the basement.
That perfectly explains the story the author tells about his early days competing in martial arts.
Oh, the karate tournament.
Yeah, he talks about entering this tournament and getting matched up against this guy who looked incredibly awkward. The guy didn't seem to have much natural talent, his form was sloppy, and Minervini admits he completely underestimated him.
He judged the 10% conscious surface.
Exactly. But then the match starts and this awkward guy absolutely destroys him. Why? Because the awkward guy had a massive built-in motivation. His conscious skill level might have been a 5, but his subconscious self-image and his desperate drive to prove himself was a 10.
His CEO and his IT department were perfectly aligned.
Yes. Contrast that with someone like Muhammad Ali, who is the ultimate historical example of someone deliberately programming their mental software.
I am the greatest.
Exactly. He didn't just say it after he won the title. He said it long before. He chose to think about himself in a way that actively contributed to his success.
He was constantly going down into the basement and rewriting his own code. He programmed his subconscious to expect greatness, so when he stepped into the ring, his body, the printout, simply executed the software his mind had already written.
But how do we actually write that script? I mean, it's one thing to say reprogram your subconscious, but practically, how do we convince that deeply hidden part of our brain that we are champions?
Right, because just standing in a mirror saying, "I am a champion," feels fake.
It feels incredibly fake.
It feels fake because the brain doesn't learn through words. It learns through chemical reinforcement. And that biological mechanism is exactly what anchors the next step in the framework.
Lesson 5. Anchor your wins with emotion. I like to call this the celebration hack. The core information here is based on how human memory actually functions. Memories are not archived equally in our brains like alphabetical files in a cabinet.
No, they are prioritized and hardened based on peak emotional experiences.
And this is where we need to dive into the actual neurobiology because it is fascinating.
It really is. When you experience a heightened state of emotion, whether that is intense joy or intense anger or paralyzing fear, your amygdala signals your body to release a flood of hormones and neurochemicals like dopamine, adrenaline, and cortisol.
And what do those chemicals do?
They literally prime your nerve cells. They act as a biological highlighter pen, telling your brain, this moment is incredibly important for our survival. Wire this into a new memory circuit immediately.
Which is fantastic if you just successfully hunted a mammoth, but terrible if you just messed up a golf swing or stuttered during a keynote speech.
Exactly. Think about what most driven people do when they make a mistake. They miss a crucial putt or they fumble a slide in a presentation, and they immediately get furious with themselves.
They swear, their heart rate spikes, they feel intense shame.
Yes. And by attaching all of that intense negative emotion to the mistake, they are highlighting it with cortisol and adrenaline. They are triggering the production of myelin.
Myelin, that's the white matter that insulates neural pathways, right?
Exactly. They are myelinating the exact sequence of the mistake. They are literally wiring the biomechanics of the error deeper into their nervous system, dramatically increasing the likelihood that they will make the exact same error under pressure next time.
That is terrifying. So by beating ourselves up, we are actively practicing how to fail.
We are. So the hack is to flip that completely upside down. The book says when you make a mistake, you have to train yourself to become a completely clinical, non-judgmental observer.
You strip all the emotion away. It's just data.
Right. But when you succeed, even in a tiny, seemingly insignificant practice drill, you must celebrate intensely. You want to build massive emotional frames around your positive outcomes and tiny, unemotional frames around your negative ones.
Now, I have to admit, when I first read this, I cringed.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I just pictured myself sitting alone in my home office, successfully sending a difficult email and then doing a massive fist pump and screaming, "Yes!" to an empty room. It feels deeply awkward.
It does feel awkward at first.
It feels like you're losing your humility or being arrogant.
Well, it feels awkward because societal conditioning tells us to downplay our successes to make other people comfortable. But the science is clear. Skipping celebration cheapens your efforts. You're actively robbing your subconscious of the neurochemical fuel it needs to build a winning self-image.
Think about Tiger Woods in his absolute prime.
The legendary Sunday red shirt fist pumps.
Right. When he sank a crucial 20-foot putt, he didn't just quietly nod, politely tip his cap, and walk to the next hole.
No, he exploded with emotion. He screamed, he pumped his fist with massive force, his entire body was engaged.
He was taking that victory, flooding his brain with dopamine, and driving the physical memory of that perfect stroke deep into his nervous system.
Exactly. And Minervini suggests using a specific verbal cue when you succeed. That's like you.
That's like you. I love that phrase. It's an identity statement.
It is. By saying that's like you. When you win, you are telling your subconscious that winning isn't a fluke. It isn't luck. It is your baseline identity. You are imprinting the image of a winner onto your internal IT system.
Another highly practical technique the book suggests is keeping a victory journal.
Yes, instead of just journaling our trauma or analyzing our problems.
Right, we are a society obsessed with that. But keeping a dedicated physical record of your wins and taking the time to constantly reread and relive those positive emotional frames actively thickens the neural pathways of success.
That is so powerful, and it transitions us perfectly into how we handle the times when we don't get to celebrate.
Lesson 6, flip failure into feedback, finding the hidden lesson. So, we established that we shouldn't get overly emotional and beat ourselves up over mistakes, but we obviously can't just ignore them either.
No, you can't ignore them.
The core philosophy here is a massive paradigm shift. There is actually no such thing as failure. There is only giving up too soon. Every single result, good or bad, contains vital clinical information about exactly where you are in the process.
There is a great quote from Sebastian Coe in the text, the Olympic gold medalist in track and field. He said, "I have won races that have taught me nothing, but I have rarely lost a race that has not taught me something."
A fear of failure just exposes a false sense of what it actually takes to achieve mastery. If you are afraid to fail, you subconsciously believe that winning means being perfect 100% of the time.
Which is mathematically impossible.
Right. The architect and inventor Buckminster Fuller had a great perspective on this in the text. He said if he ran a school, he would give average grades to the students who just handed in all the right answers because they were just acting like good parrots.
And who would get the top grades?
He would give the absolute top grades to the students who made a ton of mistakes, but then could articulate exactly what they learned from those errors to improve the design.
That's a beautiful philosophy. But, this raises an important question.
What's that?
It's one thing to say learn from your mistakes, but how exactly do we practice to extract those lessons without triggering our emotional wrecking ball? How do we analyze failure without accidentally myelinating the wrong neural pathways like we just talked about?
The book actually provides two incredibly specific counterintuitive practice techniques for this. The first one is called compare and contrast. This absolutely blew my mind.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you are struggling with a specific skill, say hitting a backhand in tennis or delivering a specific financial pitch in a boardroom, don't just keep trying to do it right and failing. Stop. And purposefully, intentionally do the skill the wrong way.
Which sounds like total heresy to anyone raised in traditional sports or business coaching.
Right. Traditional coaching says practice makes perfect. But Minervini says you should intentionally execute the error, paying intense clinical attention to how it physically and mentally feels. Then immediately do it the right way, then wrong again, then right again, alternating back and forth.
The neuroscience behind this is staggering. It relies on a concept called proprioception, your brain's awareness of your body in space.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, when you alternate between the intentional error and the correct execution, you illuminate the gap. It forces your conscious mind to deeply map the mechanics of the error, rather than just feeling generalized shame about it.
So it completely removes the emotion from the mistake.
Exactly, because you are doing it on purpose as a controlled experiment. You are turning an emotional failure into clinical data.
It's brilliant. You can't fix what you haven't clearly defined. Now, the second technique is about managing the actual length of your practice sessions based on your performance. The rule is shorten bad sessions and extend good ones.
Which, again, goes entirely against the grain of modern hustle culture.
Hustle culture says if you're having a terrible practice day, you need to stay on the field or stay at your desk for 3 extra hours and grind it out until you get it right.
But based on everything we just learned about emotive framing and subconscious programming, grinding through a terrible, frustrating practice session is the worst possible thing you can do.
Right. If you are having a disastrous day and you just keep messing up and you are getting more and more frustrated, you're just driving those negative experiences deeper into your nervous system.
You are literally programming your internal crew to fail. So the advice is, cut it short. Go home. Protect your self-image.
However, the flip side of that rule is where champions are actually made. When you are in the groove, say you are on a putting green and you just sink 5 30-foot putts in a row, or you are writing code and you are in a state of pure flow, do not look at your watch and say, well, my scheduled hour is up. Time to go eat.
No, keep going. Extend the session. Drive that intense feeling of success so deep into your nervous system that your body couldn't forget it if it tried.
You want your subconscious to literally marinate in that winning frequency.
Which leads us to the final and perhaps the most demanding principle we are covering today. It is the engine that powers everything else we've discussed.
Lesson 7. Burn the ships. Total unconditional commitment.
The title alone gives you chills.
It does. It evokes that historical idea of a conquering army burning their own boats on the shore, so retreat is physically impossible. The core information here is that true commitment requires something the author calls expectancy.
Expectancy. Justified optimism.
Exactly. It's not just hoping you will win. You have to expect to win, emotionally and viscerally in your gut, before the event even begins. And to achieve that level of expectancy, you have to eliminate the word try from your vocabulary entirely.
Ralph Waldo Emerson is quoted here saying, "Do the thing and you will have the power."
The word try is insidious. It is a built-in excuse.
It really is. It's a backdoor escape route designed by your ego to protect you from disappointment. When you say, I'll try to get this report done by Friday, or I'll try to launch my business this year, you are subconsciously protecting yourself from the pain of failure.
If you don't do it, you can just shrug and say, well, I tried.
Exactly. Burning the ships means systematically removing that backdoor entirely.
The text shares 2 absolutely incredible sports stories about how elite coaches manufacture this extreme level of expectancy in their athletes. The first is about Tara Vanderveer, the legendary coach of the 1996 U.S. Olympic women's basketball team.
Oh, this story is amazing.
Months before the actual Olympic Games even started, she held a fully staged mock medal ceremony for her team. She had them stand on a podium in the middle of the arena, and she placed mock gold medals around their necks. She wanted them to know exactly, physically, how the weight of that gold medal felt on their skin.
She was artificially manufacturing an emotional memory of a future event. That is peak subconscious programming.
Yes. And the second story is about Tom Izzo, the famous coach of Michigan State basketball. On the very first day of practice for the season, months away from the tournament, he brought a ladder out onto the court, handed his players a pair of scissors, and had them practice cutting down the net.
In college basketball, cutting the net is the ultimate sacred ritual of winning the national championship.
And guess what? Both Tara Vanderveer's team and Tom Izzo's team went on to win their respective championships that year.
What those coaches were brilliantly leveraging is a well-documented psychological mechanism known as the endowed progress effect.
Explain that, because I think we see this in marketing all the time, right?
We do. A classic study on this involved car wash loyalty cards. Researchers gave one group of customers a card requiring 8 stamps to get a free wash. They gave another group a card requiring 10 stamps, but the first 2 were already stamped for them.
So both groups needed 8 washes to get the reward.
Exactly. But the second group completed the card at a drastically higher rate. Why? Because they felt endowed with progress. They felt like they were already winning.
Oh, that makes sense.
Tech companies like PayPal use this today with green check marks when you set up a profile. If you log in and see your profile is 43% complete, just because you entered your email, you feel like you have a head start. Your motivation massively increases.
So for you listening right now, you don't need a basketball net or a mock gold medal. If your goal is to transition into a new career, your version of cutting the net might be updating your LinkedIn title today to reflect the job you want, not the job you have. Give yourself that green check mark now.
Those coaches are giving their players emotional check marks. They were making the championship feel like it was already partially theirs to lose, rather than a distant, impossible mountain to climb.
It's about fundamentally shifting your mindset from, I am striving for this distant thing, to, I am already this thing, I just need the physical reality to catch up to my identity. The book calls this living with intention.
And to explain how to put this into daily practice, the author uses this fantastic metaphor from the actor Jeff Bridges, who is actually quoting the inventor Bucky Fuller. It's the metaphor of the trim tab.
The trim tab. This is such a powerful visualization for anyone who feels overwhelmed by the idea of overhauling their life.
It really is. So if you picture a massive ocean-going oil tanker, turning that ship is incredibly difficult. The main rudder under the water is huge, and it takes far too much mechanical energy to just yank it to the side against the immense pressure of the ocean current. Right. So engineers designed a tiny secondary rudder attached to the trailing edge of the big rudder. That tiny rudder is called the trim tab.
And it takes almost zero energy to move the trim tab?
Exactly. You turn the tiny trim tab and it creates a small, low-pressure zone in the water. That tiny pressure differential eventually forces the massive main rudder to turn, and the main rudder eventually turns the entire massive ship. Jeff Bridges pointed out that in society and in our own lives, every single person is a trim tab.
You don't have to overhaul your entire life in one day with some massive, exhausting burst of willpower. You just need to move your personal trim tab. And the book outlines a highly specific routine for this that takes maybe 30 minutes a day total.
It consists of morning priming, checking in with yourself throughout the day, and evening reflection. Let's break those down because this is the practical application of everything we've discussed.
In the morning, before you look at your phone, before you let the world dictate your mood, you spend a few minutes setting your intention. You are consciously deciding which radio frequency you are tuning into today.
You are waking up the builder and putting the wrecking ball to sleep.
Exactly. Throughout the day, you use the celebration hack. You say, that's like you, when you do something right. And in the evening, you do a clinical, unemotional personal audit.
Did I move closer to my goal today? What did I learn from my mistakes using compare and contrast?
Right. Small, daily, unconditional commitments. That is your trim tab. It seems tiny, almost insignificant in the moment, but over time, it creates the low-pressure zone that shifts the trajectory of your entire life.
As we wrap up this exploration of Minervini's mindset secrets for winning, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final reflection to mull over. We talked extensively today about the iceberg theory. If your conscious mind is the CEO and your massive, powerful subconscious is the IT infrastructure running in the basement, what code are you writing right now?
That's the real question.
What orders are you whispering into the intercom? Are your daily thoughts, your reactions to mistakes, and your level of celebration feeding the builder, or are they feeding the wrecking ball? Because whichever one you feed is the one that will ultimately steer the ship.
That is the perfect question to end on.
Yeah.
You have the tools, you understand the neurobiology, and you have the absolute power to turn your own personal trim tab. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next video.
Let's continue with Lesson 815, and welcome back to our ongoing exploration of what it actually takes to achieve peak performance.
Glad to be back diving into this.
So think about the one massive goal you have been chasing for years, the one that keeps you up at night.
Oh, we all have that one thing.
Right. Now, what if I told you that the reason you haven't achieved it isn't because you aren't working hard enough or, because you lack talent?
Which is what everyone assumes, right? That they just aren't good enough.
Exactly. But what if it's simply because you actually want way too many other things at the exact same time?
That is a harsh reality to face.
It really is. Today, we are diving back into the mind of someone who mastered the art of wanting one thing and wanting it with lethal precision. I'm talking about Mark Minervini.
Yes, his story is just incredible.
For those of you who might not be fully familiar with our source material today, Minervini is the absolute embodiment of a rags to riches story. I mean, he is a guy who dropped out of school in the 8th grade.
Which is wild to think about, given his success.
Totally wild. He started with just a few $1,000s, and he turned that into a multi-million-dollar fortune. He literally won the U.S. investing championship with a staggering 155% return in a single year.
It's unbelievable numbers.
Yeah, and he has since become an international peak performance coach. So we are really looking at the blueprint of how someone completely transforms their reality.
And the mission of today's deep dive is to kind of get out of the clouds and get highly practical.
Yes, please. We need the practical steps.
Exactly. We're moving from the high-level philosophy of success into the specific, actionable architecture of a champion's daily life.
I love that phrase, actionable architecture.
Right. We are taking Minervini's overarching empowerment principles and breaking them down into 8 distinct practical lessons. Specifically, we're looking at lessons 8 through 15 from his framework.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it is incredibly exciting to transition from, like, the abstract theory of success to the actual gritty daily execution.
The stuff you actually do on a random Tuesday morning.
Exactly. We want to know what to do on a Tuesday to make these big dreams happen. So let's jump right into the first principle for today. Lesson 8. Set your master priority. Focus your fire.
This one is, well, it's a bit of a gut punch, to be honest.
It really starts with a very harsh truth from Minervini. He makes this stark differentiation between wants and priorities.
Yeah, people confuse those constantly.
All the time. A lot of us walk around saying we want things. We tell our friends we want a promotion, or, we want to run a marathon, or we want to launch a startup.
But Minervini argues that human wants are actually inherently weak.
Which is crazy to think about. Weak.
Yeah, it's a highly confronting idea. He essentially posits that if you just wanted something badly enough, you'd already have it.
Oh, wow.
Or at the very least, you would be making highly visible, undeniable, daily progress toward it. The core information here is basically a lesson in radical limitation.
Radical limitation, meaning you have to cut things out.
Exactly. You cannot have a dozen equal priorities. You can't even really have 3. Minervini argues you must have 1. Singular master priority.
Just one.
Just one. It is the one specific goal that absolutely everything else in your life takes a backseat to.
So it's not just like a nice-to-have aspiration on a vision board.
No, not at all. It becomes the ultimate ruthless filter for every single micro decision you make throughout your entire day.
I was actually reading through his personal story in our sources, and he lived this out in a way that is going to seem extreme to a lot of people, maybe even unhealthy to a lot of listeners.
Oh, it definitely goes against conventional advice.
Right. So he set this massive goal for himself. He wanted to achieve total financial freedom by the age of 35.
A huge goal.
And to ensure he hit that, he actually made the deliberate, conscious choice to put off getting married and having a family until he crossed that finish line.
He did. He looked objectively at the demands of his master priority. The sheer amount of time, the obsessive study of financial markets.
The late nights, the stress.
Exactly. The tolerance for massive risk and the unbroken focus required to become a world-class stock trader. And he concluded that those demands would fundamentally conflict with being a present, emotionally available partner and father.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
It is, but he recognized early on that you can't be great at everything all at once. Cognitive bandwidth is a finite resource.
But I have to push back on this because I know you, the listener, might be thinking the exact same thing right now. Isn't it incredibly dangerous to neglect profoundly important parts of your life, like your family, your relationships, or your health, just for a single obsessive goal?
It sounds like a recipe for a midlife crisis, right?
Totally. Like you achieve the wealth, but you are completely alone and miserable.
That is the standard critique of peak performers, absolutely. But if we look closer at his methodology, it's not about permanent, lifelong neglect.
Oh, okay. So it's temporary.
It's about sequence. It's about the seasonality of focus. You don't abandon the idea of a rich, multifaceted life, but you do have to organize your ambitions hierarchically.
So you tackle them one at a time.
Exactly. Minervini understood that once he achieved that financial freedom, it would create a massive domino effect. Crushing that one colossal goal cleared the way and provided the immense resources for him to subsequently have a wonderful, deeply engaged family life.
And he actually does have that now, right?
He does. Today, He pursues hobbies like music and competitive shooting at a very high level.
Yeah.
But he couldn't have done those things simultaneously while building his wealth in the beginning.
So it's an issue of concentration of force. You know, it makes me think of an analogy.
I love analogies. Go for it.
Okay, so imagine you were standing outside in the sun with a magnifying glass, right? And you were trying to start a fire.
Right, the classic survival trick.
Exactly. If you keep moving that glass around to, like, warm up a dozen different leaves, absolutely nothing is going to catch fire.
You'll just have some slightly warm leaves.
Right. You might make a lot of leaves slightly warm, but you won't get a spark. You have to focus your fire on one single spot and hold it there through the discomfort and the waiting until it actually ignites.
That is spot on.
Only then can that fire spread to the other areas. If you constantly shift your focus, you just end up with a lot of lukewarm ambitions.
What's fascinating here is how this applies to the unconscious choices we make every single day. We don't always realize we are moving the magnifying glass.
Right. We think we're being productive.
Minervini points out that we are constantly arriving at a fork in the road with our time. Even if you haven't consciously sat down and declared a master priority, you are proving what your default priority is by how you spend your Tuesday night.
Oh, that's good. Your actions reveal your real priorities.
Exactly. He used to run this brilliant psychological exercise with people who worked for him to expose this. He would ask them to write down a wish list in order of importance.
Like, give me your biggest dream.
Yep. And people would list things like a massive mansion, a fleet of exotic cars, tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Right, the typical Instagram-fueled dream board.
Exactly, the flashy stuff. Then, months later, when they had completely forgotten about the first list, he would ask those same people to write down the things that were absolutely non-negotiably the most important in their lives.
Their core internal values.
Right. And that second list would look entirely different. It would be family, health, spiritual, peace, security, giving back to the community.
I can guess what happened next.
Yeah, when he put the two lists side by side on the table, there was almost zero overlap.
Wow. And that creates a massive internal conflict, doesn't it?
It creates unbearable psychological friction. The lack of congruency between what they spent their time desiring and working toward the wealth, the status, and what they truly value deeply, their family, their health, it creates this constant low-level guilt.
Because you're living a contradiction.
Exactly. Your daily actions are quite literally fighting against your stated values. To set a true master priority, you have to ruthlessly align those two lists.
What you want and what you value must point in the exact same direction.
Otherwise, you will unconsciously self-sabotage, because a part of your brain knows you are betraying your core values.
That is so powerful. But wait, having a master priority perfectly aligned in your head is one thing. Like, if I tell myself my priority is launching my own business, my brain will nod in agreement right up until 8 p.m.
Well, then what happens?
At which point my hands will just reach for the TV remote, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Netflix calls.
Right. The human brain is terrible at holding on to abstract priorities when immediate comfort is available. So how do we force our physical environment to keep us accountable?
This is where we transition from philosophy to environmental design. And it brings us right into our next point.
Awesome. Let's dive into that. Lesson 9. Think big. Use a whiteboard. The visual blueprint.
Minervini argues that you simply cannot hold a massive dream entirely in your head. The brain is for processing, not storage.
I like that. Processing, not storage.
Your vision needs a physical space to exist in the real world. He tells a fantastic story in the sources about his friend Harold, who works in the music business.
Oh, right. Harold was in a severe rut, wasn't he?
He was completely stuck. He felt paralyzed by all the different projects he wanted to do, but wasn't making any tangible progress on anything. So Minervini gave him a very specific, almost aggressive assignment.
What did he tell him to do?
He told him to go out and buy the absolute biggest whiteboard he could find. Like, take up an entire wall if you have to, put it in your workspace, and do a massive brain dump.
And Harold actually did it. I remember reading this. He went out, got this giant board, and completely filled it with 50 or 60 different items. Every project, every idea, every goal.
And how did he feel after?
Well, hilariously, it initially overwhelmed him even more. He looked at this massive wall of text and just panicked. He felt worse than before.
But that panic was the necessary friction. Seeing all 60 things at once forced Harold to confront his own physical limitations.
Because you literally cannot execute 60 things at once.
Right. So the sheer scale of the whiteboard forced him to start filtering down and prioritizing, physically erasing the lesser ones to align with what we just talked about in Lesson 8.
Getting rid of the clutter.
Exactly. But the most crucial part of this story is what happened a few months later. Harold called Minervini and actually complained.
Complained? About what?
He said the whiteboard was haunting him.
Haunting him.
Yes. Every single time he walked into his office, this giant board was staring at him, confronting him with the gap between what he said he was going to do and what he was actually doing that day.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Harold thought the haunting feeling was a negative side effect, right?
He thought he made a mistake.
But Minervini said, exactly. That means it's working. The whiteboard isn't just a notepad, it's an enforcer.
An enforcer, yes.
I like to compare the whiteboard to a strict, nagging mother who's constantly telling you to clean your room. Or, to put it in modern terms for you out there working on a complex project, it's like a physical, external hard drive for your dreams that actively judges you.
A judging hard drive, I love it.
It sits there and stares back at you all day long. It physically prevents you from lowering your standards because the high standard is written in huge, undeniable letters right in front of your face. You can't hide from it in the abstractions of your mind.
And if we look at the underlying biology, there is a profound reason why this specific tool works so well. It has to do with how the human brain processes sensory data.
Oh, tell me about the biology here.
Well, if we look at the human body, we have approximately 11 million sensory receptors taking in information from the world at any given moment. Do you know how many of those are dedicated exclusively to sight?
I assume it's a large chunk, maybe half.
It's about 10 million.
10 million.
10 million out of 11 million sensory receptors are dedicated to visual input. Sight is our most powerful sensory ability by a massive, overwhelming margin.
That is insane. So the visual cortex takes up a huge portion of our brain's real estate.
Precisely. So we are fundamentally visual processing machines. And when you keep your goals physically in front of your eyes on a massive whiteboard, you are literally hijacking your brain's primary operating system.
You are forcing your retinas to constantly transmit your goals into your visual cortex.
Exactly. Keeping these goals in your physical visual field prevents them from staying in the abstract pipe dream stage in the back of your mind. For the mammalian brain, out of sight truly is out of mind.
So the whiteboard makes the goals real, urgent, and basically biologically impossible to ignore.
You literally cannot ignore a giant white wall of text in your office.
Okay, so your master priority is set, and your blueprint is glaring at you from a giant whiteboard in your office, haunting you into action. Now, you actually have to sit down and do the work.
Time to execute.
You have to execute. But as we see in the sources, the old cliche that practice makes perfect is dangerously wrong. Which leads us to lesson 10. Master the V-session practice. Start and end strong.
Yes, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Right, because if you practice a bad golf swing for 10,000 hours, you just become an expert at hitting the ball into the woods.
Exactly. You ingrain bad habits.
So how do we actually structure the time we spend practicing our craft?
This brings us to a highly structured framework Minervini utilizes called the V-session. When you sit down to practice, and it doesn't matter if you are practicing a musical instrument, running mock sales pitches, or writing lines of code, you need to map out that block of time in the shape of a V.
Oh, let me visualize that for you all listening. Think of the letter V drawn on a piece of paper. You start high at the top left, you dip down low into the valley in the middle, and then you rise back up to finish high on the top right.
That's the exact shape.
What does that mean for an actual practice session, though?
Starting high on the left side of the V means starting your practice session with something relatively easy, something you have already firmly mastered.
Like a warm-up.
Exactly. This is your psychological and physical warm-up. If you are a guitarist, it's playing a song you know by heart. It builds immediate confidence, releases dopamine, and gets you into a flow state.
Makes sense. Start with a win.
Then, once you are warmed up, you descend into the bottom of the V. This is the valley.
The dreaded valley.
This is the grueling, frustrating part of practice. This is where you tackle the challenging new skills, where you are guaranteed to make mistakes, stumble, and struggle.
But this is where the actual growth happens, right?
Yes, but the most critical rule of the V session is that you never, ever end your practice in the valley.
Never end on a struggle.
You must rise back up the right side of the V by finishing your session with an easy, mastered skill, returning to that high point of confidence.
So if a listener has a 1-hour practice session scheduled, say, studying for a difficult certification exam, how does that break down in actual minutes?
Pretty straightforward. You would spend the first 15 minutes on the warm-up, reviewing concepts you already know well, getting those easy wins.
Okay, 15 minutes of feeling smart.
Right. Then you spend the middle 30 minutes deep in the valley, struggling with the complex new material that frustrates you.
The heavy lifting.
And finally, you dedicate the last 15 minutes to an easy close, going back to a topic you were great at, so you close the textbook feeling like a champion.
I was looking into the science behind this, and it maps perfectly onto cognitive psychology, specifically the work of Hermann Ebbinghaus.
Ah, yes, the serial position effect.
Right. Back in the late 1800s, Ebbinghaus did these exhaustive memory experiments on himself, basically memorizing lists of nonsense syllables.
It's like a fun weekend.
Right. And he discovered that humans have a strong innate tendency to remember the first and last items in a sequence, while the middle items just become a blur.
The primacy and recency effect.
Exactly. It's why if I ask you to recite the alphabet, your brain instantly fires A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, but L, M, N, O, P kind of mashes together into one big letter.
That is so true.
By starting and ending your practice with success, you are literally programming your long-term memory to recall the entire session as a victory because it remembers the high of the start and the high of the finish.
And we also have to factor in the emotional weight of setbacks, which requires us to artificially structure our practice this way.
What do you mean?
Well, we could look at the research of Professor Teresa Amabile at Harvard Business School. She studied what she calls the progress principle by analyzing over 12,000 diary entries from knowledge workers.
12,000, that's a massive data set.
Huge. And she found something startling about human psychology. The negative emotional effect of a setback is more than twice as strong as the positive effect of progress.
Wait, really? Twice as strong?
Yes. And a setback increases frustration 3 times more than progress decreases it.
So meaning a bad moment hits us neurologically 3 times harder than a good moment.
Exactly. Because negative experiences weigh so much more heavily on our psychology, which is an evolutionary trait to help us avoid danger. By the way, we have to actively engineer our practice to ensure we end on a positive note.
Otherwise, we just feel defeated.
Otherwise, the sheer weight of the frustration experienced in the valley will crush our motivation to return for the next session.
I have to admit, though, there is a piece of Minervini's advice here that feels completely counter to the Mamba mentality, grind-it-out culture we are constantly sold.
Oh, I know what you're going to ask.
What if you're in the middle of the hard part, the valley, and you're just having an absolutely terrible day? Like you can't hit the tennis ball over the net, your code won't compile, you are stuttering through your presentation. Do you just grit your teeth and push through because that's what a champion does?
This is where Minervini offers a radical departure from the never quit mentality. He has a very strict rule: shorten bad sessions and extend good ones.
Shorten bad sessions.
Yes. If you are having a terrible practice session where you are failing repeatedly and you can't seem to correct it, stop. Cut the session short.
Just walk away. I mean, if I walk away from my laptop just because my code isn't compiling, I feel like a quitter. How does he justify walking away without it turning into chronic procrastination?
Because if you stay in that valley of failure, grinding it out while your form is terrible and your mind is frustrated, you are actively ingraining negative muscle memory.
Oh, I see.
You are literally practicing how to fail. You are myelinating the neural pathways of poor performance. You do not want to practice being bad.
That makes so much sense.
On the flip side, if you are having an amazing day and you just nailed a complex task, don't stop just because your scheduled hour's up. Keep going. Drive that success deep into your nervous system.
Milk the good days, cut the bad days short.
By managing your sessions this way, combined with the V-session structure, you ensure that you achieve a 2-to-1 ratio of positive practice intervals over negative ones. You are basically tricking your brain into building an invincible self-image.
That is brilliant. Okay, so if the V-session is all about ensuring we leave physical practice with a positive memory, how do we actively build that positive memory in our minds before the actual performance, which is lesson 11? Create a personal highlight reel. Visualize victory.
Because practice is one thing, but game day, or the day of the big pitch, is a totally different animal.
Right. How do we prepare our brains before we even step onto the field or into the boardroom?
That is where the power of mental imagery and the concept of the video highlight reel come into play. Minervini emphasizes that you can generate the expectation of success in your imagination long before the physical event ever happens.
So your brain doesn't have to wait for reality to feel successful.
Exactly.
There's a fantastic story in the sources about Todd Helton, the legendary first baseman for the Colorado Rockies. He had an incredible career batting average, and a big part of his mental game involved a piece of technology.
Oh, the iPad story. I love this one.
Yeah. He had an iPad loaded exclusively with video clips of his own successful hits. No strikeouts, no groundouts, no errors, just pure, unadulterated success.
A literal highlight reel.
And he would watch this highlight reel on the team plane, on the bus ride to the stadium, and sitting at his locker right before putting on his cleats.
What Hilton was doing was deliberately immersing his subconscious in images of his own peak performance. When you watch a highlight reel of yourself, or even if you simply mentally visualize your best moments in vivid detail, you're imprinting positive images directly into your nervous system.
It's like programming the computer.
But Minervini points out there is a nuance to how you do this mental imagery. There's internal imagery and external imagery.
Okay, so how do those differ? If I'm a listener trying to visualize crushing a job interview, how do I apply that?
Internal imagery is visualizing the event from the inside out, looking through your own eyes.
Like first-person view in a video game.
Exactly. If you were visualizing that job interview, internal imagery means visualizing the grain of the wood on the conference table in front of you, looking at the interviewer's face, feeling your hands resting on your lap. You are in your own body.
Okay, and external.
External imagery, on the other hand, is watching yourself perform from a third-person perspective, as if you were a camera mounted on the ceiling watching yourself ace the interview.
Yeah.
Both are powerful, but they trigger different psychological responses, and it's best to alternate them.
And Minervini uses this constantly in his own life, particularly in competitive pistol shooting, which is a sport that requires immense precision and where a single error can ruin a match.
Very high stakes.
He has a very specific routine for when things go wrong in practice.
Yes, if he is in practice and he misses a shot or fails to hit the optimal zone, he doesn't just reload and try again in a state of frustration. He immediately stops.
He interrupts the pattern.
He unloads the gun, ensures it is safe, and he dry fires 5 times mentally. He physically goes through the motion with an empty weapon, aligning the sights, squeezing the trigger, while mentally visualizing the perfect shot 5 times in a row.
Wow, 5 perfect mental shots for every one real miss.
He does this to immediately correct the software error in his brain and balance the success-failure ratio. He absolutely refuses to let a physical failure be the last mental image his brain holds onto.
It's brilliant. Carrying a highlight reel on your phone or constructing one vividly in your mind is like carrying a movie trailer of your own life in your pocket where you are always the superhero.
That's a great way to put it.
It actively prevents the brain from obsessing over the what-ifs of failure, because our brains love to catastrophize, don't they?
Oh, they excel at it.
We sit in the waiting room before an interview, and we imagine dropping our notes, forgetting our words, sweating through our shirt. The brain is trying to prepare us for the worst, but it's actually programming us to fail.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the science behind this mental programming is undeniable. There's a famous study at Harvard University that looked at the tangible power of mental visualization.
Oh, I've read about this. It's fascinating.
They took 2 groups of students. One group was asked to physically perform a task. The other group was asked to purely mentally visualize performing the task without moving a single muscle.
Just sitting there thinking about it.
Right. The researchers found that the students who intensely mentally visualized the task in advance performed it in reality with nearly 100% accuracy.
Almost perfect.
The control group, the students who did not visualize and just tried to do it cold, only achieved 55% accuracy.
That is a staggering difference just from sitting in a chair and thinking.
It is.
Yeah.
And the biological mechanism behind this is that your brain has a remarkably difficult time distinguishing between a vividly, emotionally imagined event and a real physical event.
It can't tell the difference.
When you visualize a physical action, your brain actually sends microelectrical impulses to your motor cortex and into your muscles. You can literally think with your muscles.
Think with your muscles. I love that.
If you aren't using visualization, you are operating at a massive competitive disadvantage because you are leaving that cognitive programming to the chance of your surrounding environment.
Okay, let's map where we are. You've set your master priority, you've mapped your goals on the giant whiteboard, you've practiced perfectly using the V session, walking away from bad sessions, And you've watched your highlight reel to visualize victory.
You've done all the prep work.
You have done all the homework, you are ready. But then the reality of the moment hits. Which brings us to lesson 12. Box breathing for instant calm, the Navy SEAL tactic.
Because the body always has its own agenda.
Exactly. You are 5 minutes away from stepping on stage to give a keynote, or you are about to walk into the CEO's office for a salary negotiation, and your biology betrays you. The physical anxiety kicks in, your chest gets tight. What do we do then?
At that moment, positive thinking is largely useless. We have to address the physiological response to stress.
You can't just think your way out of a panic attack.
Right. When you are under intense pressure, your amygdala senses a threat and your body goes into full fight-or-flight mode. You start holding your breath without realizing it. Your blood pressure spikes. Cortisol floods your system. You start sweating. Your heart rate elevates.
You're in survival mode.
This state makes it incredibly difficult for your prefrontal cortex, the logical, highly trained part of your brain, to function optimally. You literally lose access to all that perfect practice you did.
It all goes out the window.
To counter this rapid physiological spiral, Minervini points to a tactical technique called box breathing.
Now, I've heard about box breathing, but my assumption was always that it was just about getting more oxygen to the brain, like taking deep, gulping breaths before jumping into cold water.
It's much more structured than that.
Yeah, looking at Minervini's notes, this isn't just...
Absolutely. This is the exact breathing method utilized extensively by Navy SEALs when they are in active combat situations or undergoing the extreme sleep-deprived pressure of BADS training.
If it works for SEALs, it'll work for a boardroom.
Exactly. It is specifically designed to rapidly decelerate your heart rate and force your autonomic nervous system back into a state of control.
Let's walk the listener through it. If someone is sitting in their car, panicking before a meeting, how exactly do they do a box breath?
It's a 4-part cycle, creating the 4 equal sides of a box. You start by inhaling slowly and deeply through your nose for a rigorous count of 4 seconds.
Okay, breathe in for 4.
Then you hold that breath in your lungs for a count of 4 seconds. Next, you exhale smoothly and completely through your mouth for a count of 4 seconds.
Breathe out for 4.
And finally, the hardest part, you hold your breath out with completely empty lungs for a count of 4 seconds. Then you immediately repeat the cycle. Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold empty 4.
4, 4, 4, 4. Got it.
Minervini does this for at least 5 minutes every single morning, and specifically right before any high-pressure event.
So what does this all mean? The oxygen part makes sense to me. You breathe deep, it stimulates the vagus nerve, it tells the parasympathetic nervous system to calm down.
That's the basic mechanics, yes.
But why the holding? Why hold your breath with empty lungs for 4 seconds when your body is literally screaming for air?
Yeah.
What is the magic of the 4-second hold?
That is the secret engine of the whole technique. And it comes down to cognitive load theory. The rigorous counting and the physical holds are just as important as the oxygen itself.
Cognitive load theory, explain that.
When you are panicking in your car before that meeting, your conscious mind is racing with catastrophic thoughts. What if I forget my numbers? What if the CEO laughs at me? What if I get fired? Your working memory is completely hijacked by fear.
It's running worst-case scenarios on a loop.
By forcing your mind to rigorously count 1, 2, 3, 4, and rigidly manage the physical discomfort of the holds, the counting serves as a heavy cognitive anchor.
Because you literally cannot count to 4 in a rhythmic pattern and simultaneously run a complex scenario about getting fired in your head.
Exactly. The human working memory has very limited capacity. It can only truly hold and process one conscious, complex thought at a time.
So it's a distraction technique.
A biological one. It physically cannot obsess over negative spiraling thoughts while it is dedicating its processing power to executing the rigid parameters of the box breathing protocol. The physical act of the deep breathing lowers your heart rate mechanically, while the mental act of counting essentially starves your panic engine of the cognitive resources it needs to keep running.
It starves the panic engine. That is such a cool way to think about it.
It forces you into a neutral, highly controlled mental space.
Now we are getting into the ultimate mind-body hacks, which brings us perfectly into lesson 13. Power pose your way to confidence. Body language secrets.
Oh, this is where it all comes together.
Because, well, box breathing hacks your internal nervous system, slowing the heart rate and clearing the working memory. You also have to hack your external hardware, your physical body posture.
Yes, because the mind-body connection is a two-way street. Historically, we have tended to think that our emotions dictate our body language in a one-way flow.
Like, I'm sad, therefore I frown.
Right. We feel sad, so we slump our shoulders. We feel happy, so we smile. We feel defeated, so we look down. But modern neuroscience and psychology show that the reverse is equally true and perhaps even more powerful.
Your posture dictates your feelings.
Your physical body language can actually dictate and manufacture your emotions.
This is often referred to as the facial feedback effect, right? The idea that forcing yourself to hold a pencil in your teeth to simulate a smile actually triggers the brain to release chemicals that make you feel genuinely happy.
That's the foundational concept, yes. But Minervini notes that this scales all the way up from the muscles in your face to how you hold your entire skeletal structure.
The whole body.
He heavily references the groundbreaking research of social psychologist Amy Cuddy on what she calls presence and power posing. Her studies demonstrated that holding a power pose, which means standing tall, chest out, chin up, hands on your hips, or physically taking up space with your arms raised for just 2 minutes, actually changes the chemical composition of your blood.
The actual endocrine numbers on this are wild.
They are profound. Cuddy found that just 2 minutes of holding a side power pose increases your testosterone, the hormone associated with dominance, confidence, and risk tolerance, by 19%.
19% just from standing like Superman.
Simultaneously, it decreases your cortisol, the primary stress hormone that causes anxiety, by a massive 25%. You are chemically altering your state of mind, literally brewing confidence in your bloodstream, just by the mechanical way you arrange your limbs.
And the sources also bring up another study that blew my mind from a researcher named Samuel Mercora involving endurance cyclists. It highlights how sensitive our physical performance is to visual and postural cues.
Yes, Mercora had elite cyclists pedaling at their absolute maximum exertion on stationary bikes. While they were suffering through this intense physical effort, he would flash images of either happy, smiling faces or sad, frowning faces on a screen in front of them.
So they were looking at faces while biking.
But he flashed them for just a fraction of a second. It was entirely subliminal. The cyclist didn't even consciously register seeing the faces.
And yet it changed their physical output.
Drastically. The cyclists who were subliminally exposed to the happy faces performed significantly better and pushed harder for longer than those exposed to the sad faces.
That is wild. They didn't even know they saw them.
Even a microscopic, unconscious shift in visual mood cues altered their physical athletic output. The brain is constantly scanning for cues to determine how much energy to release.
I think of this whole concept as doing a body audit. Think about checking the alignment on your car. If your car is out of alignment, if the axle is bent, it's going to naturally drift off the road no matter how tightly you grip the steering wheel.
A great analogy.
In the same way, if you are sitting in the green room before a big presentation and your shoulders are slumped, your chest is caved in, and your head is down looking at your phone, your physical alignment is off.
You're setting yourself up to drift into the ditch.
Right. Because of that posture, your mind is going to inevitably drift right into the ditch of negative self-talk. You are physically telling your brain, I am defeated, I am small, and your brain will obediently supply the anxious thoughts to match that physical shape.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. And the true mastery of Minervini's system comes from combining these techniques into a single pre-event ritual.
Putting it all together.
Imagine doing a body audit, throwing your shoulders back, and adopting an I'm a badass power posture, while simultaneously executing your 4-count box, breathing to slow your heart rate, all while mentally replaying your highlight reel of past successes.
That sounds like a superpower.
When you combine the physical postural dominance, the chemical regulation of the breath, and the positive visual imagery in the motor cortex, you create an absolutely unbreakable physiological and psychological state. You are practically bulletproof before you even turn the doorknob to walk in the room.
Okay, the breath is calm, the posture is powerful, the movie trailer of your success is playing in your head. It is finally time to perform. Which leads us to lesson 14. Enter the neutral zone. Let go to win.
The moment of truth.
The announcer calls your name or the client walks in. You step out there. What is the actual mindset in the exact specific moment of execution? Do you keep pumping yourself up?
Actually, no. This is where we talk about entering the neutral zone. When elite performers enter the arena to actually execute, they essentially self-induce a state of amnesia.
Amnesia.
They stop overthinking, they stop focusing on the crowd, they stop thinking about the financial stakes or what their boss will say, and they completely let go, allowing their subconscious training to take over. They go on automatic pilot.
The sources use a really evocative analogy from American football for this state of mind.
Right. In American football, the neutral zone is the literal 11-inch length of the football. as it rests on the ground on the line of scrimmage before the play begins.
Just that tiny space.
By rule, no player from either the offense or the defense is allowed to cross into that 11-inch space until the ball is snapped. It is an area of total calm, a vacuum of stillness, right in the middle of giant men who are about to violently collide.
A vacuum of stillness. I like that.
Minervini uses this as a powerful metaphor for where your mind needs to be. In a calm, undisturbed space, completely insulated from the chaos, the noise, and the expectations surrounding you.
There's a quote in the sources from Jonathan Edwards, the world champion triple jumper, that completely blew my mind and illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, I know the quote you're talking about.
He was about to attempt a jump that would break the world record. He is standing on the track in a stadium with tens of thousands of screaming fans, knowing he is being broadcast to 1 billion people on live television.
Imagine the pressure.
Exactly. And after he made the historic jump, a reporter asked him, "What were you thinking about right before you jumped?" And Edwards replied, "All I was thinking about was jumping into the sandpit."
Jumping into the sandpit.
That's it. No thoughts of 1 billion people watching, no thoughts of world records, no thoughts of his competitors or his legacy, just the sandpit. He was entirely insulated in his own neutral zone.
That is the ultimate example of valuing the process over the outcome. If he had focused on the outcome, the world record, the pressure would have altered his biomechanics. By focusing only on the sandpit, he allowed his body to do what it had done 10,000 times in practice.
But wait, I have to ask, doesn't pressure actually help some people? We always hear about athletes getting hyped up or feeding off the chaotic energy of a hostile crowd. Don't you sometimes need to be somewhat agitated or aggressive to perform at a peak level rather than totally calm?
This raises an important question about the nature of arousal. And the answer is that it depends entirely on the specific demands of the task. The text includes a fascinating chart comparing the optimal level of physiological arousal for a golfer versus a mixed martial arts fighter.
You can't get 2 more different physical activities.
Exactly. For an MMA fighter stepping into a steel cage, the optimal state of arousal is extremely high. Anger, aggression, and a massive surge of adrenaline are highly useful tools when your primary task is to physically dominate and survive another human being.
You need to be fired up.
But imagine taking that exact same high arousal, aggressive, hyperventilating energy and trying to use it to sink a delicate downhill 30-foot putt at the Masters.
That would be a complete disaster.
It would be a disaster. Your hands would shake, your touch would be gone. A golfer needs a moderate to low level of arousal. The ballerina performing at the Bolshoi needs a completely different chemical state than the linebacker playing in the Super Bowl.
So if a listener is walking into a tense salary negotiation, bringing that MMA fighter energy might make them look erratic or hostile. They need to calibrate to the golfer's arousal level.
Precisely. You have to match your internal arousal level to the physical and cognitive demands of the task. But the universal truth across all of these disciplines, whether you need high arousal or low arousal, is that once the action starts, the conscious, over-analytical mind has to get out of the way.
You just have to execute.
The neutral zone means letting the subconscious, which has been rigorously programmed by your V sessions and your visualization, execute the performance without conscious interference. Furthermore, to stay in the neutral zone, you have to cognitively reframe how you view the pressure itself.
How so?
Champions view pressure not as a threat to their safety or their ego, but as a privilege. Pressure means you have earned the right to be in a situation that actually matters. It isn't there to crush you. It is there to summon you to dig deep and deliver your personal best.
Okay, so we've covered the micro moments extensively. The breath, the posture, the visualization right before the big event, dropping into the neutral zone. But how do we sustain this level of elite execution over the long haul?
Because you can't just do it once.
Right. Not just for one big game or one big quarterly meeting, but every single day of our lives. Because life isn't mostly big moments. Life is mostly just a series of ordinary, tiring Tuesdays. To maintain this, it requires a system. Which brings us to our final lesson today. Lesson 15. Prime your day with intention. The daily ritual.
Exactly. You cannot rely on spontaneous bursts of motivation. To maintain this champion's architecture day in and day out, you have to bookend your waking hours with 2 very specific, highly structured rituals: morning priming and evening reflection.
Bookending your day.
These are non-negotiable daily appointments with yourself. They frame the chaos of the day.
Let's break down the morning routine first. What exactly does the morning priming look like in practice?
It is incredibly efficient. It only takes about 10 to 15 minutes total. As soon as you wake up, before you look at your phone, before you check the news, before you let the demands of the world enter your brain, you start with 5 minutes of the box breathing we discussed earlier.
4 seconds in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold, empty.
Doing this first thing in the morning immediately grounds you. It lowers your resting heart rate and physically prevents the anticipatory stress of the day from hijacking your nervous system before you've even gotten out of bed.
It sets the baseline. And after those 5 minutes of breathing, what's next?
Then you transition smoothly into 5 minutes of targeted visualization. You visualize the day ahead of you, but most importantly, you set a specific conscious intention for the day that moves you directly toward the master priority you established back in Lesson 8.
So tying it all the way back to the beginning.
Even if it is just one small action, like making one difficult phone call or writing one page of your script, you vividly visualize yourself executing it perfectly. By doing this, you're effectively programming your brain's GPS for the next 12 hours.
You are telling your reticular activating system what to look for today. And then how do we close it out? What is the evening bookend?
The evening reflection is similarly structured and just as crucial. Another 10 to 15 minutes before sleep, you again start with 5 minutes of box breathing.
More breathing to wind down.
This acts as a physiological bridge, transitioning you out of the frantic high beta wave energy of the workday and bringing you back into a state of calm alpha wave relaxation for your personal time. Then, once calm, you engage in a radically honest personal audit of your day.
Oh, an honest audit. That sounds tough.
You ask yourself hard questions. Did I actually execute my morning intention? Did my actions today align with my master priority? Or did I get distracted by lesser wants? What went well that I can replicate? What threw me off course? It's a daily, objective recalibration.
You know, this daily 30-minute commitment, 15 in the morning, 15 at night, makes me think of a concept introduced by the legendary architect and systems theorist Bucky Fuller. I actually first heard about this through a really fascinating interview with the actor Jeff Bridges, strangely enough. Fuller talked a lot about the concept of the trim tab.
Ah, yes, the engineering of massive ships. It's a brilliant concept.
Right. So if you look at a massive ocean liner like the Queen Mary, to turn that giant ship, you have a massive rudder at the very back under the water. But to move that huge rudder against the incredible rushing pressure of the ocean water takes far too much mechanical energy.
It's too heavy to move directly.
Exactly. So engineers put a tiny miniature rudder right on the trailing edge of the big rudder. That tiny rudder is called the trim tab. When the captain wants to turn the ship, they don't fight the big rudder. They actually just turn the tiny trim tab first.
It creates a chain reaction.
Turning the trim tab creates a small pocket of low pressure in the water that gently pulls the big rudder, which in turn easily steers the massive ship.
That is a phenomenal, highly accurate metaphor for how these daily rituals operate in our lives.
It is. Because changing your whole life, achieving absolute financial freedom, winning a national championship, transforming your body that is like turning a massive ocean liner, when you look at the scale of the goal, it feels impossible.
The resistance of your old habits is just too strong.
But the daily 30 minutes of priming and reflection, that is your trim tab. It's a tiny, highly leveraged action that requires very little effort, but dictates the direction of the entire system.
Exactly. When you synthesize this entire journey we've been on today, from Lesson 8 to Lesson 15, the overarching theme is control. By ruthlessly managing the microactions, controlling the 4-second breath, actively fixing the slump in your posture, deliberately walking away from a bad V-session practice, and executing the daily 30-minute bookends, you effortlessly steer the macro.
You master the small things to master the big things.
By focusing intensely on the trim tab of your daily physical and mental habits, you are inevitably, almost mathematically, steering yourself toward that massive vision you wrote on the whiteboard and the master priority that anchors your entire life.
It is incredibly powerful when you step back and view it all as one deeply interconnected system, rather than just, a list of random life hacks. Which brings us to our final thought for today. We just talked extensively about how your daily routines and positive habits are the trim tabs that steer your massive ship toward success.
A great visualization to leave on.
But I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on, something to explore on your own that flips this concept entirely on its head. If small daily habits inevitably steer the ship, what is the negative trim tab currently operating in your life?
Well, that's a deep question.
What is the one tiny, perhaps completely unconscious habit, the small daily excuse, or the quiet limiting belief that is silently, constantly steering your massive ship slightly off course every single day? Find it, name it, and rip it off the rudder. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you found this content helpful. Please stay tuned for the next episode. Goodbye.